Come on then, let's talk about Doctor Who. Hello, welcome back to my world of stuff. My name is Paul Mount. I haven't done a Doctor Who video for 10 days, something like that, since the end of the last series, because it struck me that there's not a lot to say. I've laid my cards on the table and I've told you what I have heard about the future of Doctor Who, and yet the internet is still awash with clickbait videos from people who are saying, there's rumours of this happening, there's rumours of that happening, there's going to be a Christmas special, Billy Piper's doing this, David Tennant's blah, blah, blah. The simple fact is that there is no immediate plan for any new Doctor Who. Whether the BBC are behind the scenes looking for production partners down the line, possibly. But at the moment, the BBC's view, as I was told, is that Doctor Who is a tired brand which needs a rest. Personally, that's something I agree with. I think it needs a rest of about 5 years. And new faces and new writers on board who will treat it as a new series rather than just digging into 62 years worth of continuity and spewing out fan fiction, which I think is what has happened, certainly in places in the last couple of series under Russell T Davies. So, having said that, there is a lot of peripheral Doctor Who stuff going on. It's not just about the TV series, there are other things. So what I thought I would do is launch an occasional series that might become more and more occasional as the months wear on, just gathering up recent bits of Doctor Who news and the occasional rumour. I'm not going to give any oxygen to all the silly rumours that are just clickbait videos put out by confused Doctor Who fans who want clickbait and are determined to make a life out of making Doctor Who videos on YouTube, which again is something that baffles me. So I'm not going to go down that road. I'm not interested in those rumours. What I'm going to talk about are bits of news about things that are keeping Doctor Who alive while it's off the air. So this is going to be an occasional series. As I said, it depends if there's a build-up of things over a few weeks, if there's an announcement of a new bit of merchandise or something that seems interesting. I will put together a compilation video on the weekend, just rounding it all up and just having a chat about it generally and just offering my two penneth on things. The first thing we need to talk about, naturally, is the Russell T Davies sign-off comments in the latest issue of Doctor Who magazine. So let's talk about them. Right, if you're a regular reader of Doctor Who magazine, and I'm not especially, I used to read it religiously in a church, and I sort of stopped reading it a while back because it sort of became just a puff piece for new episodes. There was no real critical edge to it, and it was a lot of stuff about Big Finish, which doesn't interest me in books, and stuff that it just was a bit too bland and didn't really go into any depth analysing the episodes because it's a BBC licensed publication and it can't. It has to have a big smiley face all the time. So I haven't really read it properly for ages, but I do have a digital subscription, which is a lot cheaper, and it allows me to sort of flick through it on my iPad occasionally, and occasionally there'll be an interview or something that I want to read or some piece, but very rarely, because it's just generally, oh, it was all marvellous, darling, it's a wonderful production, and wow, 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 and I get a bit tired of that. But I was aware before the new issue arrived on my digital iPad that there was something fairly interesting that Russell T Davies said in his production notes column, which has been running since the series came back in 2005. He would regularly update viewers, sometimes cryptically, about things that were happening in the world of Doctor Who. Then I think Stephen Moffat took it over, and his column was a bit more regular. Just Chibnall would do it occasionally, but Russell T Davies brought it back in force when he came back to the series a couple of years ago. It's never really given away very much. It's always sort of hints and clues and building up excitement about Doctor Who. But in this latest issue, which is the first one to come out since the reality war brought season 2 to a cataclysmic ending, he has made some interesting comments at the end of his column, which is his last column for a while. It's a pause. He presses pause. So this is what he actually said in that last column, and I will just give you my interpretation of it, because, as I said, there are dozens of videos about this. Doctor Who fans desperate to keep their YouTube channels going, jumping on any little snippet so they can make lots of videos that will keep them going just a bit longer. But anyway, this is what he said at the end of his column. It's not the end. Don't be mad. Doctor Who will never end. There are pathways leading to potential futures. We've still got the mystery of that bright and blazing ending. You might call it that, Russell. Oh, hello. Yes, indeed, Billy. And there's Susan, of course. I wonder if we'll ever find out who the boss is or who the boss are. I'm still wondering who Gus is from Mummy on the Orient Express. Maybe they're the same. But we don't know what's happening yet. And while everyone works that out, I'll take a pause on this page. Thanks for reading. And thanks to Doctor Who Magazine. A delight to work with you on this wonderful magazine. Hopefully we'll have news soon, and certainly the war between the land and the sea is about to break out. So there are great things ahead. Until then, it has been an absolute joy, which of course were Ncuti Gatwa's sign-off words before he regenerated. So what do we make of this? What do we make of what he said? Is there anything that we can read between the lines? Personally, I take it as him stepping back and walking backwards through the exit door, frankly. I think it's him saying, yeah, Doctor Who is finished for now. I think we've all sort of come to the conclusion that Doctor Who will live forever in one way or another. It will always come back. It will have its hiatuses. And this is something that Russell said actually at the launch of season 2. So I think he may be on to something even then. But he indicated that, Doctor Who is one of the great folklore characters, ripe for reinvention. And those reinventions will happen every now and again. There will be pauses. And I think we're in a pause. He knows that. He knows, presumably what I have been told is that the show isn't coming back in the immediate future. What throws a little spanner in the works is when he says, hopefully we'll have news soon. That's a bit of a wishy-washy way of putting it, really, isn't it? It's like saying, hopefully I'll win the lottery next week, or hopefully I'll meet Kylie Minogue and we'll get married. It's sort of vague and wishful thinking, possibly. He hopes that there'll be some news. I don't think there's going to be any news. And there's been talk again, it's sort of gossipy stuff, that the BBC are very close to a deal with another streamer. I don't see that happening because the BBC have had a 2-year deal with Disney Plus, one of the biggest streamers in the world. It hasn't worked. And there's been no announcement yet that Disney have walked away, but they clearly have, because if they hadn't, we'd know by now. So I can't see Netflix, Amazon, Paramount, S4C, anybody else jumping into what has been seen in the last couple of years as a floundering franchise, because Doctor Who has stumbled. It's lost its mass appeal. It hasn't been posting great viewing figures. And I'm not even going to get into the stuff about the decline of terrestrial TV. It is said that the Disney metric hasn't been great either. So it hasn't been what I think that the BBC, Disney and Russell T Davies expected it to be. They expected it to be this big explosion that would rampage across the world as this new craze. And I never thought that would happen, because I don't think Doctor Who is meant to do that. It's not meant to be Marvel. It's not meant to be Star Wars. It's a very specific, quirky little thing that isn't meant for that mass appeal. And I think the fact that it's ever had huge appeal is a credit to the way it's been made, the storytelling, the people who have done their best to make it popular. And I include in that some of the actors who've made it really popular. Because contrary to what Tom Baker always said, that it's actor-proof, it clearly isn't, because we've had several actors now who haven't chimed with the public and have failed in the role. So I think Russell T Davies' comments, I read them as a farewell. I think he knows that there's nothing coming up. I think he's hiding behind the smokescreen of the war between the land and the sea. Great things ahead. It's as if he's saying, look, we've made this as well. Look, Doctor Who's not finished. We've got this coming. But he knows that there's nothing after that. So I interpret it as a farewell, but it's a coded farewell. He's not going to come out and say, yeah, we're not doing anymore. I'm going off to do something else, because he is going off to do something else. He's written a new drama for Channel 4, title of which eludes me, which is coming up next year. Now, I think that's written. I think he's been writing that in his downtime from Doctor Who, while he was waiting to see if there was going to be more Doctor Who. And now he'll get involved in the production of that and any rewrites. And he's very hands-on in terms of his shows being made. So I think this is him saying farewell. And I dare say at some point he will come back and say, I've moved on. He'll put it that way. I don't think it's in his genes to say, oh, I'm sorry, this didn't work. I'm leaving Doctor Who. It will always be couched in terms of, darlings, this was always the plan, to do 2 years and go out with a bang and have a break. It'll always be couched in those terms, because there's no way that he or Bad Wolf or anybody else is going to say, we failed. So anyway, that's how I interpret it. I think it's Russell T Davies saying bye-bye, but without saying bye-bye. Sad. I think if you're looking for new Doctor Who in the future, well, you're left with this, really. This is your future for new Doctor Who adventures. And if that floats your boat, then that's great. Not for me, but if it keeps the fire burning for a while, then good for it. However, it seems as if the Doctor may be back on TV in a slightly different form. I read this and I went sort of, oh. But then it isn't meant for me, so why should I even have an opinion on it? But it appears that Doctor Who's TARDIS, according to excitable news reports last week, is heading to BBC preschool channel CBeebies. This is where it ends up. The BBC has announced the next stage in the expansion of its Whoniverse, a preschool animation version of its big selling IP, which just wrapped second season under Russell T Davies. The show will see the Doctor travelling through time and space for the preschool audience, solving mysteries and problems alongside their companions and other friends. And of course, they may come up against one or two challenges on their way, the BBC said. BBC has set out a desire to find a passionate production company to produce the series, which will run independently from the main show. Well, there is no main show. Disney, which co-produces The Bad Wolf and BBC Studios' produced main version, will not be involved with the animation, which is ironic, really, because Disney made their name in animation. Speaking about the plans, Patricia Hidalgo, Director of Children's and Education, said, "Everyone is welcome at CBeebies, including the Doctor. This much-loved franchise entertains millions around the world, so it's only right that our younger audience get to experience the wonder and the magic of the Doctor in a brand new format. This is an extremely exciting opportunity, and we are looking forward to welcoming companies to pitch for this new project as we continue our commitment and investment in the UK's animation industry. Hurrah! I'm all for homegrown animation. I'm not an animation person myself these days. I find it very hard to engage with animated characters, which again is ironic because I used to love my Wacky Races and Dastardly and Muttley and the Flintstones. I can occasionally dip in and out of The Simpsons because that's a different type of animation. But yeah, I'm not an animated guy these days. This fills me with nothing but, yeah, so what? I mean, it's not aimed at me, and it would be wrong for me to watch it because it's aimed at the audience of basically fetuses. So it is an interesting development. It's a sort of downward development. It's not as if we're saying Doctor Who's been so successful lately, we're launching a series of films, or we're doubling the budget, or we're making more series. It's going to become a cartoon for tiny children. It's not really an upgrade. It's not a promotion. It's, I suppose, the best it's doing is keeping the name alive and having some sort of televisual presence. But I can't imagine what sort of adventures a CBeebies Doctor's going to have. I mean, we're going to have Davros robbing a sweet shop. We're going to have the Cybermen bullying children in the playground. It doesn't really fill me with much excitement, but then it shouldn't. Apparently it's going to be 52 episodes, 10 minutes, if it happens, of course. They're asking for production companies to pitch them. It may well be that production companies don't want to touch Doctor Who at the moment. I don't know. But it's a development, and good for the BBC for wanting to do it, but it obviously doesn't fill me with anything but, okay. Bit more interesting is this. Again, it's not news. It's something that's been announced or mentioned, which might not be true or might be true. At a Doctor Who convention week before last, I think, called Utopia, actress Frances White, who appeared as Cassandra in the Mythmakers, the William Hartnell story in 1965, which is missing from the archives. She was at the convention and she said that an animated version of the Mythmakers is in the works. We have had a lot of Doctor Who animations over the last few years, classic Missing Adventures. We had Evil of the Daleks, Power of the Daleks, Underwater Menace. Sorry, I meant classic adventures. Faceless Ones. There's been a lot of these releases, and I've reviewed some of them. You can find the reviews further back on the channel. I think the last one was The Savages, and they serve a purpose, but it's not exactly Pixar animation. It's very rudimentary, cheap animation, married to extremely good soundtracks. I think if the soundtracks weren't as good as they were, they would not be worth anybody's time. But they fill gaps in the 97 missing episodes of Doctor Who. And the Mythmakers is an odd one because it's no monsters, it's a historical story. which were phased out a couple of years later because the viewing figures weren't great for the historicals. And I'd be interested to see this one. I think it's got a fairly large cast and there's a lot going on in it, so it'll be interesting to see what happens if and when it happens. However, this comes from Reddit, incidentally. Yeah, I'm really down with the kids. I look at Reddit. Somebody who was actually at the event says that he doesn't know if what she was talking about has anything to do with animation as such. Frances White, I know of Frances White as an actress, and obviously because she was in Doctor Who 1965, she's of an age now. And it may be that she's done something for a future Blu-ray release, an interview or commentary or something, and she's becoming confused about animations and reconstructions or something. I don't really know. But stuff, as we know, is being banked for various Blu-ray collections. Actors of an age are being interviewed in anticipation of their eventual Blu-ray releases of their stories. So as the Reddit post says, it could well be something that's been done for that, either a making of or a season overview or a feature on a particular actor. Alternatively, it might not be BBC related at all. It could be that she's done something for Keith Barnfather's real-time Mythmakers series. They do have a series of regular interview releases talking to Doctor Who alumni from the past, and that's called the Mythmakers, and that's been running since the 80s. So it could be that it's all got a bit jumbled and she's not entirely sure. But she was quite adamant, apparently, at this convention. She was, the host was trying to sort of quieten her down about it, but she repeatedly kept correcting him to say that they were definitely working on it. So that could be coming out next year, the Mythmakers. If and when anything's announced, I will, of course, let you know about it. Finally, then, for those of you who like their Doctor Who in book form, the history of Doctor Who books goes back to the 1960s with the classic original hardback editions of the Zarbi, the Daleks, and the Crusaders. And then Target was a phenomenon in Doctor Who publishing terms in the 70s, and Doctor Who publishing has continued ever since. We're still getting Target-type novelizations of recent stories. We're getting new fiction. There's a batch of books novelising recent adventures coming out next month. And later on in the year, there's a new Ncuti Gatwa era book, which is a bit odd, because, again, it sort of suggests that Ncuti Gatwa wasn't really expected to leave at the end of the series, because there's a new Ncuti Gatwa era novel coming out in November. It's called The Moon Cruise. The blurb for the book says, "Step right up for the most sensational cruise in the galaxy. The TARDIS lands on board a luxury space liner owned by the interstellar shipping magnate Marilyn Moon. The Moon Cruise offers its wealthy passengers up-close views of astounding cosmic wonders, and the Doctor and Belinda are soon high-rolling it on the top deck." Is that a young people's thing? Are you high-rolling? I don't know. But there is a sinister side to life on board. What is the secret of the smiling blonde-haired mannequins? What happens to the cruise ship workers when they go off shift? The Doctor soon learns not all prisons come with bars on the windows, while Belinda faces one of the greatest cruelties in the universe, a zero-pay contract in retail and hospitality that can never be broken. So that's coming out on the 13th of November in hardback. It's written by the author of the Church on Ruby Road novelisation, whose name I cannot recall at the moment, but I'll put it here. And that's coming out in November. So it is vaguely interesting, I suppose, that BBC had this book planned and commissioned and written, ready to be released in November, when the Doctor who's in it has moved on, which I think adds fuel to the fire that Ncuti Gatwa really wasn't expected to leave after season 2, but moved on for reasons connected with the delay in any news about whether the show would continue. But that's coming out in November if you're interested. Might be a nice little stocking filler if you're a major Whovian. Right, thank you. I think that's all I've got. Just looking at my notes. Yeah, that's about it. I hope you've enjoyed this first episode of News from the Whoniverse, as I've decided to call it. It will be an irregular thing. It's not going to be weekly. Depends on what's out there. If there's interesting bits of information, I might even report on rumours that seem to have any potential validity to them. I may hear more myself this coming week, because I'm going to be speaking for the first time in a while to the person who gave me the info about Doctor Who being suspended or paused for a little while. So I may find out if there's any development on that, and if there is, I'll report back to you as soon as I can. But for now, this is me signing out of the Whoniverse. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you are new here. That would be great. Also, leave a comment down below about any of these things I've talked about. What do you think about Russell T Davies's Bye Bye? Do you think we're going to get the Mythmakers on animation? And are you really hyped up for Doctor Who on CBBS? Well, good for you if you are. Right, I'll see you soon. Until I do, keep taking the stuff.